Aussie Liberty. My name is Lee. I want to talk about treaties with Aboriginal people in Australia. With the ongoing sort of push about recognition in the Constitution, there's a lot of talk amongst activists to get a treaty between Aboriginal Australians and uh, regular European, or everybody else, non-Aboriginal Australians. Um, I should first say that we talked about this topic on taking liberties, where I made the case for that Australia was invaded, and I'll put the link here. But I'll just restate the argument as well. So, if you believe in property rights, if you believe that you create property when you take an unowned resource and mix your labour to it, and that gives you property rights over that land, if you believe in property rights, sort of Lockheed property rights, then you believe Australia was invaded. You have to. There's no other explanation, unless you think that somehow Aboriginals were not human enough to create property rights. Like, you don't need to recognise the Lockean framework of thinking to create property rights. All you need is unowned resource, labour, mix it with your labour, or mix it with human sort of activity. That's property rights. The fact that Aboriginals didn't know what property rights were, the fact that Aboriginals exercise their property rights collectively, is an irrelevance, to whether they could keep them. There's really, I'm yet to be persuaded by any other case. I mean, really, the case that Australia wasn't invaded depends on Terra Nullius. That is, the country wasn't owned. Well, you have to believe that there's no such thing as property rights, because Aboriginals took unused resources, mixed their labour in a variety of ways, and created property. I mean, they might not have had property over every single square centimetre of Australia, but they had over enough that when British came, they drove them out. And they didn't compensate them, and they didn't ask for their permission. In fact, from what I understand, there was the Batman Treaty in now what's Victoria. The colonial authorities, this is a guy who supposedly made a deal, and he may not have, made a deal with elders of an Aboriginal tribe, or a number of tribes, and the colonial authorities rejected any possibility of that. They just essentially said that the Aboriginals had no ability to contract out use of their land. They explicitly rejected any concept of property rights. I think if you believe in property rights, you have to accept that Australia was invaded. Now, should then, therefore, Australia make a treaty with Aboriginal people now? I would say I'm skeptical. I think recognition of stealing people's land and compensating them for them is important. I think returning Aboriginal sovereignty over land that is owned by Aboriginal people is important. I think the difficulty is, though, is who do you do a treaty with? Well, who is the legitimate? Because really the issue of treaties is of one group of people dealing with another group of people collectively. That's kind of hard to know, since the tribal structures have broken down since 1788. It's difficult to say, well, are these people legitimately the tribal owners of this land? Well, my preference would be to see it divided equally. That is, you find who has tribal sort of the descendants of a tribe. You take the land, you divide it up amongst them equally, and then they have true title over their land. I think giving control of land over to land councils or tribal leaders essentially just creates a whole other set of issues, which we've already seen in Aboriginal kind of not self-regulation, self-government, where you get cronyism, where you get all sorts of terrible, ATSIC and all the rest of it. We don't need more of that. We need individual Aboriginals to have control of their own land, not just treating them as idiots who need the government or need tribal elders to lead them for them. I think that is the great innovation that will emancipate Aboriginal people from the shackles of history and of current policy failings, is actually by giving them control of their own land. So I guess the devil's in the details. If you come up with a treaty system that works, yeah, sure. If it comes down to sort of how things are traditionally done, well, no. I think it'll just become a way of some Aboriginals exploiting other Aboriginals and probably exploiting Australian taxpayers. And that's not on. All right, well, thanks for joining me. Remember that we're on Facebook. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, obviously. So subscribe, please like, please share. Thanks very much.